Today we're going to collect together a lot of the information we've learnt about phrasal verbs with on. This will just be the first lesson because I have another board full of phrasal verbs with on. There are hundreds and hundreds of phrasal verbs with on. Now I'm sure that you have already heard about some of these phrasal verbs because I've mentioned them in other phrasal verb lessons. So we need to keep repeating in order to learn these phrasal verbs. It helps me to use these phrasal verbs more often when I go through all of these verbs again and again and again. It widens my vocabulary, certainly, so I hope it widens yours as well. So let's start with bring something on, which was in phrasal verbs with bring. If you bring something on, you bring it about. You cause it to happen. If something is brought on, it is caused to happen. So this is all about cause and effect, this one. It gives you a cause. And you might say the bad weather has brought on an epidemic. I think that's the same example I used last time, so I'm sorry about that, but it's still sitting in my mind. So yeah, this is about something causing something else, X causing Y, and we can use bring about as well. Now, if you call on someone, then you visit them. That would be call on someone. But if you call on the Prime Minister to lower taxes, you are making a request, really. You are asking him, maybe making a demand even, although it's more like a request. You're asking him to lower taxes. But if you call on your hidden talents, it means you try to make use of your hidden talents. You have recourse to those hidden talents. You summon up those hidden talents, and then it means exactly the same as draw on. You could say he drew on all his strength in order to win the arm wrestle. Yeah, he called on all his strength in order to win. So call on and draw on are very often used like that in the sense of make use of or have recourse to. Now I put all of these four together because I think they're very similar. They all concern depending on something. So you can say everything hangs on the chairman's decision, meaning everything depends on the chairman's decision. Everything hinges on the chairman's decision. And you also rely on people, which is very similar to depending on people. So I put all of these together, and I think they're very similar as well. When you say you can count on me, it means you can depend on me. I'm a reliable person. You can rely on me. So I'm trying to put them in groups so that you can bring them together and remember them as groups. So all of these refer to some kind of dependency. It's about depending. All of these ones are phrasal verbs with talking, and I have banged on about these phrasal verbs many times, and it's because they're really common. They're really often used. So if you are on at someone about something, it means you keep mentioning it, and maybe it sounds like it's a little bit annoying because you continually do it. It's a phrasal verb of talking when you continually ask someone about something. It could be summed up in one word: nag. When you nag someone, you keep on at them about something. You know, perhaps your wife keeps on at you about cutting the grass, or perhaps your boss bangs on about raising profits for the year, and it means he continually says it, and it maybe even gets a little bit annoying. And the way to use them is you bang on at someone about something. So both of those other prepositions, the third preposition depends if you want to say who they're banging on at or what they're banging on about. Okay, and you know, all of these verbs work like this. You can say he keeps harping on at me about the weather, or he's always rabbiting on about his wife. He's always rabbiting on at me about his wife. Whatever it is, but they do have slightly different meanings, and if you want to know about the different meanings, please look at my phrasal verbs, ways of talking video. It's not even phrasal verbs, although it is mentioned in on phrasal verbs, the very first video I did about a year ago. So there are slight differences between these words. Waffle, for example, sounds like somebody is talking a bit of nonsense in there as well. It sounds like it's nonsensical, whereas drone sounds like they're doing it in a very monotonous, boring voice. So there are slight differences there. There are little nuances that you might need to learn. Now, if somebody dwells on the past, it means they're fixated with the past, and the past collocates very well with dwell on, but it doesn't have to be the past. You could dwell on a former girlfriend, and it means you can't get out of your head. You're obsessed with her, your mind is fixed on her, and you keep dwelling on the past. You're dwelling on your relationship. That relationship is weighing on your mind. If something weighs on you, then it's a burden. It's a burden. It's on your shoulders. It's weighing on your mind, usually. It's not you. You don't often say weigh on as a physical burden. You don't normally say this bag is weighing on my shoulders, but I suppose you could. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's very often used metaphorically about some kind of burden which is weighing on your shoulders. So I thought they were quite similar, because when you're obsessed with something and when you have a burden that's weighing on your shoulders, I think that quite often they're fairly similar. Not exactly the same though. Now, if you use keep on, go on, carry on, they're all about continuing, and so are drag on and play on, although they are slightly different. Keep on, go on and carry on would just mean continue. However, if you say the meeting dragged on for 3 hours, it means it continued for 3 hours and it was boring. When something drags on, it's boring. Your maths lesson might drag on. I hope it doesn't, because it's an interesting subject. But if you say the maths lesson dragged on for an hour, it means that it was an hour long and it was really boring. Now, if the referee tells you to play on in a football match, that means continue playing. And so I thought it was very similar to these ones. But there is a second meaning of play on. And I'm going to do phrasal verbs with play in a future lesson, because they're actually very interesting. There are a lot of different phrasal verbs with play. And when you play on someone's fears, you exploit that fear. You exploit a weakness when you play on something. And so advertising plays on our fears and our hopes as well. It exploits our fears. It uses them in order to sell more product. So you could certainly say advertising plays on our fears. It's another meaning of play on. But you could say that Manchester United played on their opponent's weaknesses. They played on their opponent's lack of speed or something like that. So it can be used in sport too. Now, if you press on or soldier on or march on, you keep going regardless of difficulty. And that's why I've put them very close to these, because they are very close to these. So you might say, let's press on and get this project finished, meaning let's continue in spite of all the difficulties and get it finished, get it sorted out. And if you're having difficult times, or your friend is having difficult times, you may say to them, come on, put a brave face on, chin up and soldier on, march on, meaning keep going, don't let things get you down, make sure you keep going forward, and don't let these other difficulties, hindrances, obstacles, don't let them bother you. Okay, if something has no bearing on something else, if X has no bearing on Y, if X doesn't bear on Y at all, it means it is not relevant to Y. It has no relationship. So perhaps you say something like the latest, the election result doesn't, or the news concerning the new Prime Minister, it doesn't bear on the election result. And it just means it's not relevant to the election result. It's not connected to it in any way. Very common, this one. And so it's kind of like about relevant, being relevant to something else. And that's why I've put it with be based on. If you say the book is based on the film, clearly it means that the film was made first and then the book was based on it. It takes the same structure as the film. Usually it's the opposite. Usually the film is based on the book. But I thought both of those were about connecting things together, and so I put them together. But you may not see the similarity there, and I can understand that. We can also say bear upon. This doesn't bear upon something else, and it means it's not relevant to something else. It has no connection to something else. It has nothing to do with something else. So very common, that one. If you have any questions about bear on, put them under the video, but please check Oxford. I guarantee there'll be hundreds of examples. Now, if something verges on or borders on something else, that means it is almost the same as something else. It is almost like something else. The example which comes to mind immediately is when we say his behaviour borders on insanity, or his behaviour verges on insanity. And it means it's that far away from complete madness, from complete sanity. It's very close. So here, border on or verge on, I suppose, means very close to. It is very close to. Not physically, but metaphorically. Very often used in that sense. Yeah. I don't suppose, do we use it physically as well? His garden borders on my garden. His garden verges on my garden. Maybe, but I think we'd normally say he's next to. But usually metaphorically. Yeah. I don't know, what else could we say? The way he flirts with other women, it verges on cheating on his girlfriend or something like that. You might say his behaviour verges on this, and it means it's almost like this. It's that far away from this. It's very close to this.